everybody always talks about, hey, you need to come up with multiple streams of income, passive income, and stuff like that. Typically, I'm a huge overanalyzer. I'm always been like that, little indecisive in a lot of things. But with the Amazon thing, I kind of just took a leap of faith, and I'm really glad I did, because I think if I analyzed things as much as I usually would have done, I probably would have been like, hey, this isn't going to work. This isn't for me. There's no way to know everything beforehand. It's impossible. You're going to make mistakes. You need to learn by just doing it. And I'm really glad I just pulled the Band-Aid. I just pulled the trigger. Yeah. So that's kind of how I just kind of did it, and it was awesome, man. I'm so happy I did it that way.
Just starting us off here, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background. Where were you before launching this business? What were you doing?
Yeah, so before my whole Amazon business, I'm a dentist. I practice in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
I graduated dental school 2021. So, I mean, not a lot of people know this, but for dental school, it's 4 years of undergrad, another 4 years of dental school. So it's a lot of school, right? So of course, in the middle of you being in school, all you're thinking is like, man, I'm so tired of school. I'm so tired of school. I can't wait to actually get out and start working and stuff like that. And then, a lot of times you come out and you go join the working field and you realize man, it's great. Don't get me wrong, but you're like, man, I'm going to be doing the same thing Monday through Friday for 40 years,
Yeah.
So that's kind of what sparked my initial just interest in trying to find other ways to, have some money on the side and stuff like that. That's kind of just little background, honestly.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's very cool to hear about. You're starting off. Obviously, we'll get into that, but that seems to lead where, eventually you went with your product here. But let's take a step back before we get there. So you've got some desire to do something else. How did you get brought onto the idea of selling on Amazon specifically and doing Amazon FBA?
Yeah, for sure. So, very recently after graduating school, I became one of my side hobbies at the time became just learning everything there possibly could be about personal finance, like stocks, investing, and stuff like that. So I started learning about that, reading books, watching videos. And it really became something I was very, very interested in. And one of the side things of that was, everybody always talks about, hey, you need to come up with multiple streams of income, passive income, and stuff like that. Like most people, I was on YouTube, and I ended up staying up really late one day watching video after video, and one thing led to another. And I'm not sure how I found Travis's channel, but I stumbled upon his channel. And I started watching his videos, and I was like, this Amazon stuff seems really interesting. I use Amazon all the time. This really seems like a cool, interesting opportunity. So that's kind of how it started. That's basically the basis. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So, discovering Amazon, seeing Travis doing that, having the motivation going into it of wanting to do something else, I'm sure those are all big factors. When you saw this stuff, were you ready to take the leap right away, or did it take a bit of time before you finally got around to launching, choosing what you want to do? And
it was weird, man, because I feel like my personality, typically I'm a huge over analyzer. I'm one of those people, if I'm gonna buy this new product or this new thing, I'm gonna research the crap out of it.
Right.
For example, I bought my girlfriend a juicer recently, and I ended up going so deep into juicer research that a lot of times you overanalyze things and you kind of talk yourself out of doing. And it was so weird because that's definitely my personality. I've always been like that, little indecisive in a lot of things. But with the Amazon thing, I kind of just took a leap of faith, and I'm really glad I did, because I think if I analyzed things as much as I usually would have done, I probably would have been like, hey, this isn't going to work. This isn't for me. So I'm really glad that I kind of did use faith, because I think that really, there's no way to know everything beforehand. It's impossible. You're going to make mistakes. You need to learn by just doing it. And I'm really glad I just pulled the Band-Aid. I just pulled the trigger. So that's kind of how I just kind of did it. And it was awesome, man. I'm so happy I did it that way.
I'm so glad to hear that. That's great. Yeah. When you talk about just making the jump forward, taking those steps, what were those first steps you took? So obviously finding a product, I imagine, doing some research, and then diving in. You went straight from the manufacturer, or walk me through that for a second.
Yeah. So probably it all kind of started with, I started getting these ads for Amazon FBA and stuff like that. And that's when I think I eventually, a lot of them, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And eventually I ran into Travis's, and I thought Travis's videos were very unique because it talks about Amazon FBA, but it's also talking about creating something that you're passionate about.
Right.
And that's kind of what changed my perspective on the whole Amazon thing. So then I started thinking, I was like, man, well, what am I passionate about? Am I, I'm a very recent grad dentist. I love my job so far. Like my job's awesome. I'm a big sports fan. I love soccer. I was thinking of all these things. I love drinking coffee. So for the next like 2-3 weeks after kind of getting that inspiration from Travis's videos on YouTube, I started like analyzing everything I do. I was like, okay, what do I do when I drink my coffee? Like what could I do to make when I go play soccer, like what could I do that's something different? And one day it kind of just hit me. It gets a little technical in like the dental
Right.
realm, but so obviously as a dentist, I see people all the time. I see hundreds of patients.
Hmm.
But I'm not one of those dentists that have perfect teeth. I actually have like cavities on like all my teeth. It happened to me when I was like 18. I went from 0 cavities to like 10.
Dang.
So like it gave me just a different perspective. And when I went through school, I started realizing almost all my cavities were formed between my teeth.
Hmm.
Usually when they're between your teeth, it's usually from a lack of flossing.
Yeah.
And, going through school and having the personal experience that I had with it, I started learning about school, basically the importance of fluoride. It basically helps make your teeth strong, prevents cavities. And I started thinking, I'm like, man, almost 99% of all effective toothpaste has fluoride in it,
Yeah.
but almost no floss has fluoride in it. And I thought
Interesting.
that was super, super interesting.
Yeah.
And the idea really came from, I had another dentist that I worked at a company for 6 months out of school. This other guy that was there with me, he used to tell his patients to get some toothpaste and rub it on their floss and then floss with it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Kind of what born the idea. It just hit me one day and I was like, dude, how come I don't find someone that can put fluoride on the floss threads to make it more effective
Yeah.
in fighting cavities? And that's kind of how the idea took place.
So
And that's when I started messaging suppliers and manufacturers from China. And eventually I found a couple people that were willing to do it. And that's kind of how it all started.
that's super cool to hear because I mean that's like that insight you had about like putting fluoride on floss. That's only something you would get because of your profession. You had that like kind of that
100.
inside source there to figure that out. And that's such a cool way to dial into a market like that. So reaching out to manufacturers, you were just getting onto there in China. Was that hard to find someone that would do that, or did that happen like relatively quickly?
It honestly wasn't that bad. I sent a bunch of messages. A couple people told me no, 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 but I had at least three or four. I think I maybe messaged 10 to 15 suppliers. I want to say 2 to 4 told me it was possible.
Yeah,
So then at that point, I started looking at like their catalog and stuff like that and seeing which direction I wanted to go.
sure.
It honestly wasn't too bad. It was not too bad
Nice.
at all.
That's good. Cool. So I imagine at some point around here, you have to make the commitment of placing an order. Were you committed at this point? Was it like when you got the invoice, was it like, let's go forward? Was there any like a worry at this point, or were you all like bought in?
Yeah, it's crazy because once I kind of put the idea together and I saw it was a possibility,
Yeah.
I wanted to validate my idea. So I did a lot of like scientific research to see is it more like a placebo? Like there's scientific research that talks about how fluoride is super, super important in maintaining strong teeth, reversing small cavities and stuff like that. But I wanted to see what research was currently out there about if it was effective being on dental floss. And there wasn't a lot of research, which kind of blows my mind, but I was able to find enough articles that really did prove that it was very effective. So that kind of validated my idea. And once I got that validation via scientific research, I was like, you know what, man, like I need to just do this.
Yeah.
So once I knew it was effective and I was able to work with the supplier to bring things to life, once I got that invoice, I was like, oh, let's do this. It's happening.
Yeah. And how big a commitment were you making with that?
Not terrible. I mean, maybe one of the things that I would have done differently, I definitely overcommitted, but at the end of the day, I mean, the of entry was honestly not bad. I mean, their minimum order quantity was 10,000 units, but it was 33 cents a unit. So it
Wow.
was like little less than $4,000, So yes, it's a big commitment, but especially nowadays, I feel like most people getting into the Amazon space end up having to put in $10,000, $20,000, which is a huge commitment. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have bought all the quantity that I did, but it still wasn't like a massive commitment. It was big, but at at this point I kind of believed in the product and I was just committed to it.
Totally, totally, totally. So other than that initial product run, it sounds like, I mean, that wasn't too bad compared to what some people put down. Were there any other costs? Did you run samples before this to try the product out, make sure it works properly?
Yes, yeah, great question. So yeah, I got samples. So when I first got my samples, I believe I was between 2, 3 suppliers.
Yeah,
So I got samples from both of them. One of them, I could tell the quality just wasn't that great. Like I mean, what I saw was like little floss picks, little
yeah,
handles, stuff like that. And a lot of one of my suppliers, they were all like flimsy. The floss thread was like shredding, breaking. And I was like, all right. So I instantly threw out that one. And there was one supplier that just, I swear they went above and beyond. They gave me, all I asked for was like, hey, can I have this design, this color, this type? And they went above and beyond. And they gave me like 10 different colors, kid
wow,
version, adult version, and all they gave, and everything was properly labeled. They said what material this is made of, what material the handle's made of. So they honestly went above and beyond, and that really, really helped me solidify, the type of plastic I want to use for the handle, the type of material I want to use for the floss thread. And they're the ones that ended up being my supplier. But it
yeah.
was, yeah. So I definitely got samples, but they were awesome, man.
That's pretty cool to hear about that process of. I mean, a lot of people just like, oh, it's a sample, whatever, or just think to try it from one manufacturer. But it sounds like from you testing out multiple manufacturers, there you're really able to find one that was great and worked out for you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it was the nice thing was, I mean, samples. I was trying to find my numbers yesterday and I couldn't find them, but I'm sure the samples were very affordable. I know some people like it costs thousands of dollars just to get like a mold made and stuff like that, but my samples were super, super affordable. So it was nice to kind of get a lot of them and test them out and stuff like
Totally.
that.
Yeah, very cool. So apart from the product side of things, on like the design and branding, was there any expenses on that end in terms of
Yes.
creating the brand and everything?
Yes, for sure. A lot of trial and error as well. A lot of my initial designs, I basically sketched them on like a composition notebook, had like an idea of what I wanted. And, I think I paid a guy on Fiverr to give me like an initial design or logo design. The logo design was, I came up with the idea myself.
Yeah.
But I had someone in Fiverr kind of put that together, maybe 50, $75. So that was easy. But then I started working on the package design and same thing. I used Fiverr. I think the first 2 initial attempts at my design just were not it. Like they just weren't very good. And then finally, I believe on the third person, they got it perfect. We refined it and I was like so happy.
Nice.
I'd say I think my numbers here say like 325 in total for design. I'd say 325 maybe to $400. So nothing crazy, but it took a little bit of trial and error. And I think honestly at the end I got a little lucky, but it turned out super nice. So super happy.
Yeah, it looks like it. How it came out was a pretty good design and
Yeah.
worked out for sure. Yeah, okay, so that's design side of things, and then legal. Did you end up getting LLCs, trademarks, anything,
Yeah.
patents?
So I ended up doing a DBA. In hindsight, I wish I did an LLC.
Okay, yeah,
But I did do the DBA. The trademark, I did not start with the trademark, but once I launched on Amazon, and I believe after a month or 2 months, that's when I applied for the trademark, became brand registered and stuff like that. And then for patents, I looked into it, but from my understanding, it wasn't something that's very patentable, if that's a word.
right. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, because I looked into it, but it just wasn't something that I could see that was gonna be able to
Right.
get in on it. But yeah, so DBA trademark wasn't at first, but I did get a trademark.
Mhm.
No patent.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, I mean, that's goes to show. I mean, that probably saved you in a lot of the startup costs, not going with the LLC and waiting
Yeah.
for the trademark, so that you can get off the ground without all these extra things in there. Well, that sounds great. So you get the production run going, and then obviously coming up next, the launch on Amazon. Did you have a plan going into the launch, or was it kind of just launch and see how this goes?
Yeah, and the idea of the product came first.
Mhm.
And then I started, so I believe, I wish I remember the exact breakdown, but I want to say the idea of the product, the initial idea was born, and then I joined Travis's course that helped walk me through a lot of the other stuff to basically get my product made and stuff like that. But once it was like ready to launch on Amazon, that's when I also got Helium 10 and I started learning like kind of like the ins and outs,
Yeah, of
more technical stuff of selling on Amazon.
course. Yeah.
That was the part where I think was kind of a rude awakening for me because I was like, oh, my idea, I validated my idea. I believed in my idea, but I realized that doesn't necessarily guarantee success on Amazon. And that's the part that was very stressful for me because once I started seeing how competitive the space was in my niche, that was the part that was very stressful. And I knew going into it, I was like, man, this just might not work.
Right.
But that was what I did a lot of pre-launch. I did a lot of like education on how Amazon works,
Mhm.
listing optimization, keyword research, and stuff like that. But that's what I did a lot of pre-launch, which was scary because it's a lot of info.
What did your like pre-launch consist of? I mean, did you do like social media launch and that type of stuff and try to get the word out, or?
Yeah, so I did social media. I'm not the biggest social media guy. I do have a social media account for my brand, but I mean, I maybe have 200 followers. Um,
Mhm.
but I did attempt, and I'm still trying to grow my social media presence. But I did have like a social media presence pre-launch, but not a huge one. I didn't have a Facebook group, so not a huge. If I could go back, that's something I would change. But I did not have a huge group or pre-launch social media, but I did have a little bit of that stuff.
Sure. Okay. So and then got that off the ground, like a little bit of the pre-launch, and then that launch happens that first month, right? How did that go? Launching on Amazon that first month?
Honestly, what scared me a lot was once it was like basically ready to launch, that's like I said, I was learning all this stuff from Helium 10 and I was like, oh my God, like this might actually be not so easy. This might actually be super, super challenging. But honestly, my first month was not bad. I was thoroughly impressed. Like I felt like I was making sales. It was just cool because at first I was like, man, only friends and family are gonna get some stuff. And then it became each day I was looking, I was like, oh, someone from Alaska bought this, you know? So that was a cool feeling. And I was pretty happy with how the first month went. Was it anything wildly successful? No,
Right.
but it was a little bit profitable, which was nice.
No, totally. Yeah. So that's great. So what did you end up doing in revenue that first month?
First month of revenue, I made $990, so nothing crazy, but still, I hit a point pre-launch where I was like, man, I might sell nothing, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So just having revenue was super cool to me. You know, is it anything spectacular? No, but I was happy with it, and I was content with that.
And it looks like ran some PPC too.
Yeah, yeah. And that was another beast in itself. I mean, PPCs, even now, I don't have a full grasp and understanding of it, but I did run some very surface level PPC, which was okay. More of like a trying to like figure out how it even works. Cause that was the tough part for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But it looks like even like past the PPC that first month, so you're profitable now, month
Yeah,
one there.
which is awesome.
That's
First
yeah,
month,
that's great.
I think my first month maybe made like $100, which is nothing
Yeah.
crazy. But I was like, man, if I can maintain this, this
Mhm.
is becomes cash flow, and that is success in my book, you know.
Totally.
And it
I mean,
was month one, so I was super happy with that. Was it as great as I wanted it to be? No, but it was. I was happy with it, man. I really was.
no, that's great. I mean, having a month one like that where you're profitable, because I mean, so many people like they'll get the revenue going, but a lot of it's a lot of learning. It's like getting your PPC campaigns optimized. So that's definitely a good sign. Heading into with your launch there. Month one looks like goes great. Maybe not quite expectations, but still it's a very solid month. Moving into
Yeah.
month two, what happens in month two now?
Yeah, so month 2 is when reality started to set in.
Yeah.
I had a huge learning curve in month 2. So month 1, I was definitely blessed by the honeymoon period, which just kind of shows you a lot more than you probably should be.
Mhm.
Month 2 is when things started to be a little tougher. That's when, some days I wasn't even getting a sale.
Oh,
My PPC was just eating away at my profit. And I ended up losing money on month 2, but it was a good learning experience. But I started to realize a lot of the issues that my product had
yeah.
was month 2.
What type of issues were you realizing?
Yeah. So my first issue when I first did all my calculations, my initial product cost, I think was $8.99, or I was selling it
Mhm.
for $8.99, $9.99 on Amazon, which I felt like was super competitive. I'd
Right.
make some money. And if you crunch the numbers, yeah, you can make some money, but the big issue is you don't calculate PPC into that. And
Right.
PPC can make or break your product so fast and eat away your profit.
Sure.
So one of the big issues I ran into was I had my product for $9.99. After my first month, things slowed down. So I was like, man, maybe my stuff's just too expensive. Let's drop it to $8.99. I can still make a little bit of profit with that. I dropped it to $8.99. My sales did not increase. My PPC continued to eat away at what little profit I had. And the tough part for me was, for PPC, I was paying $1.50 a click, and I would have to make one sale every 2-3 clicks, which is essentially unheard of. So that was something that was super, super challenging for me. So that was a wake-up call for month 2, and that's kind of what also happened in month 3 as well.
Month 3 as well. It
Yeah.
does look like, I mean, sales go up in month 3 still.
Yeah.
Cool. And is that from just the PPC spend expanding, or that was the
Yeah.
main driver of that?
Oh yeah.
Gotcha.
At that point, so I don't know if this is for sure what happened, but I want to say it is. I think around month 3, I started doing a little bit of listing and keyword optimization,
Sure.
and started running some more aggressive PPC. I ended up getting a lot more sales, but I lost money. I
Oh,
was like down $120, rough estimate. So
dang.
I had a lot of sales, but I was losing money just selling my product.
Of course. So that's 2 months now in the negative. PPC is eating in, low profit margins. It's not looking too great, I guess, for your product at that point. I'm sure there's a lot of worry setting in. Month 4, what happens? Or what changes and what takes place?
Yeah. So at month 4, I believe that's when I started getting the hang of PPC. I've rearranged my listing a little bit, and I think one of my big issues is I was aiming for these very big common words that get thousands and thousands of searches,
Right.
and I realized I could get on the sponsored ads or show up on people's searches when they search for it,
Yeah.
but it was costing me so much money and I was not profitable from it. So then I started changing my gears and I started targeting some of these words, these keywords that were more lower search volume. And that's what slowly decreased my PPC cost, but slowly increased my sales and also increased my profit. So that was probably my changing point from month 3 to 4. Was I started aiming more for these low hanging fruit versus the very busy, large search volume keywords. And I also believe at month 4, I realized my price point at $8.99, $9.99 was not feasible. And I also was losing money at this point. So I kind of said, screw it. I'm going to go back to my initial list price of $12.99. And that's my head, or my first thought was sales are going to decrease because of the cost. But my sales slowly increased. They didn't change too much. So that's when things started to change a little bit for me.
That's so interesting about like the sales price right there. Like, I mean, you sometimes think logically you're going to lower the price, you'll get more sales, but oftentimes, I mean, you're getting those like premium customers who see the higher price, they think higher value, and it ends up, it sounds like, working out for you, at least not decreasing sales and giving you a higher profit margin to work off of.
Yeah. And also to add, I believe around month 3 or 4, that's probably when I also got brand registered,
Nice. Okay.
A+ content. I believe I also enrolled in Vine at that point. So some of my reviews slowly started going up as well. And I think that also helped me as well.
Totally. Yeah. All those things setting in, I'm sure that can do a lot for your listing. Before we go to month 4, what was the total revenue and profit for that month?
Yeah. So month 4, revenue was 2,300. So month 4, I think was still a little ultra aggressive on PPC, but my total sales like shot up, absolutely shot up. So 2,300 revenue. I spent almost $1,000 on PPC. So month 5 is probably when I had that transition period. But month 4, I was still very aggressive on PPC, and my profit was still, I mean, here it says $50. So
yeah,
for all that revenue, I mean, I'm making almost zero profit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that number, you hear that revenue number and that sounds great, but then to see all that money evaporate, I'm sure that's not the best feeling.
That's when a lot of things changed. It wasn't from month 3 to 4. It was from 4 to 5 is when I started. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'm still sure it's great to go from being in the negative to being in the green. But let's hear about that now. So month 4, things start to move in the right direction. Month 5, it looks like things really start to get in the groove for you.
Yeah. So month 5 is so that's probably when everything came together. My PPC was a little bit more optimized. My listing was figured out. I have trademark, A+ content. And at this point, I've started to figure out some of the ins and outs of Amazon. And that's when my total sales decreased almost back to where month 1 was. But I was a lot more profitable. And at that point, that's a huge victory for me. If I can maintain that and keep that, I'm going to be so happy. So month 5, that big turning point for me, 100%.
And month 5, what were those revenues and profits?
Yeah, so month 5 revenue was around 1,500, around $400 in PPC costs, and profit was around 290, $300.
Cool. So sales slightly down, but it's that profit that's going up and the
Yeah.
margins that you're keeping.
Yeah,
That's
and
great.
that was at that point, that was the most profitable month for me, so that was super, super exciting.
And then let's just take it into month 6. It seems even better month 6, really getting the groove, learning these things, the listings coming together.
Yeah, so month 6 was a great month, around, like, $2,000 of revenue. My
Nice.
PPC cost has gone down a little bit to 390, and my profit was around, like, 467, so becoming more profitable, and at that point, I'm pretty darn happy with my margins at that point, so super happy. At this point, I'm kind of smooth sailing, things are kind of figured out, so it was good. It looked like we started off not so hot, and we've slowly started turning things around, so it was a good feeling.
That's great. And that month was profit and revenue. Were those numbers?
Yeah, for month 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, so around 2,000 revenue, 390 PPC, total profit was around 467.
So best month yet. That's great. Cool.
For sure.
And so at this point, like, how many months have you been on Amazon in total at this point? I mean, like from when you started.
Yeah, so this has been when I launched it, so this would be month 6.
Month 6, yeah. But to today, so from 6 from there, how many more months in total have you been on Amazon? Like for your product?
Yeah, so I launched my product in March, and then right now it's January, so we're getting close to a year, So
Close to
10
a year.
months, 10 months. Yeah.
Very nice. And I'm assuming since that month 6, that's just been continued growth, or continued at least profitable months.
Yeah, it's been steady profit. I've messed around a couple things with PPC here and there. Haven't had a whole lot of success with that, but
Sure.
things have basically stayed pretty consistent. I probably average around $1,800 to $2,000 in revenue a month.
That's great.
PPC cost is anywhere from like 350 to maybe it's usually around the 350 to like 450 a month, but my profit's been maintaining around like 400 to like $500 a month. So it's been nice. It's been nice.
That's great. Yeah, steady profit. Now that you got there, that's great to hear. From your journey doing this the past like 9 months, I guess, what would you say like the biggest things you've learned are, or mistakes along the way that you've adopted to?
Yeah. So one of the best things I could have done for this, and we touched base about this at the beginning, was
Yeah.
a little bit of analysis is great, but sometimes over analysis is going to be what just hinders you, analysis paralysis.
Totally.
Sometimes just pulling the trigger, just doing it you're never going to regret that. You might not be as successful as you think, but you're going to learn so much. Like at the end of the day, even if my product failed, I learned so much on talking to suppliers, how Amazon works, Helium 10, that it would have given me the groundwork to find a new product and to guarantee its success.
Right.
I'm lucky, I'm thankful that I was able to turn things around a little bit and become a little bit more steady and profitable.
Totally.
But that never would have happened if I just analyzed things and never did something. So just doing it was huge for me, just huge. And then you said some of the mistakes, correct?
Yeah, mistakes or lessons learned. And
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, mistakes, I didn't really have like any massive mistakes. Probably the big thing for me is I wish I knew a little bit more or learned a little bit more about selling on Amazon before launching my product. I would say I wouldn't say before making my product, but before launching, because I definitely had some growing pains at the beginning. Like my price was too low. I didn't realize how aggressive PPC was.
yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't have like massive mistakes, and maybe I should have not bought 10,000 of my
Yeah.
orders. But I also, when I bought those 10,000, I kind of had a mindset shift. I told myself like, man, even if this fails, I'll have a lifetime supply of floss. So I kind of like made it a joke. I was like, man, if this doesn't work, like I'll never have to buy floss ever again.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a great way of looking at it. And then, yeah, like you said, I mean, yeah, I'm sure you could have learned more, but it's a learning experience, actually getting the hands-on. It's hard to replicate that. And although I'm sure Travis's course and YouTube and everything, it's like you can do your best to learn, but I'm sure there's some of that hands-on experience that's kind of the best thing you can get in a lot of ways. That's very cool. So in terms of what's next, have you sold through that first order? Are you looking at getting another order produced, or where's that stand?
Yeah. So It's nice because my product, like the raw profit from just not including Amazon, I mean, it's very cheap. I paid
Yeah.
33 cents a bag, 33 cents with the shipping cost, maybe
Right.
rounded up to like 40 cents a bag. My listing sells 3 bags in one, so it's like $1 of material cost.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I just passed the halfway point of my total supply.
Nice.
So based on like some recent calculations, I probably have another like 10 months worth of product.
Wow.
So it's probably going to be a little bit before I have to make another supply. And the nice thing is with a lot of the profit that I have at this point, like it's almost as paid for the full initial
Yeah.
production, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's great. That's very cool to hear. In terms of beyond that, is this it for you on Amazon and you come to running a product, or have you looked into expanding and doing more?
Yeah, yeah. So I am going to be launching a new product hopefully sometime soon. I'm in the works of it right now.
Yeah.
I kind of ran into some analysis paralysis, or I just didn't focus on it when I should have.
Right.
Um, because I actually came up with this idea a while ago. But I do have a new product in the works right now. I'm actually talking with the supplier to get it hopefully made within the next couple months, but it's on the horizon. So so I'm excited for that, and I'm glad that I was able to kind of use my first product as a learning tool, because now I'm very confident with this next one.
Yeah, that's great. No, I'll have to keep on the lookout for that and keep us posted about how that goes. I'm excited to check it out.
Yeah, it's another dental related
Yeah,
product. I think it's going to be at that point. It's kind of my niche at this point. But
totally. That's super cool how you're using like your insight within that market to go into a market using your competitive advantage.
yeah, no, for sure.
That's all very cool, and I'm super glad for the success you've had. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing your story with me today. That was very cool to hear about where you've been with it, the success you've had, and it seems like it's going very well.
Yeah, yeah, no, man. I mean, it's been, and I'm glad I get to talk about it, because
Yeah.
a lot of people, I'm sure I've used a lot of Travis's videos where I saw other people go on and I've used their stories as inspiration and stuff like that,
Mhm.
whether it be success or failure or even just a learning experience. But I'm glad I was able to talk to you guys about it and just kind of give some insight.
Sweet, man. All right. Once again, appreciate the time. Super glad to hear about everything, how good it's going for you. Yeah, but we'll be in touch.
All righty, Connor. Yeah, man, nice meeting you, and I appreciate the time as well.